solving a product problem is really about three things, right? One is identifying a problem that is such a big pain point that a user will change behavior or pay money in order to take that product that's built. I think the second part is coming up with a design that's the most elegant way to solve that really big problem. And the third part is if you've done 1 and 2 successfully, then maybe adding a dash of personality that reflect your brand or your ethos, etc. And the most successful companies tend to do, 2 if not 3 of these things really, really well. My sense is we are in the early to mid stages of having a deep sense of this in India. But I think that as the number of users that come online and to get to mobile data increase, the user attention that people have is going to decline, right? The amount of time that someone is going to give to a new app before they decide that it's good or not so good is going to become smaller and smaller. And as that happens, it's going to be very important for apps to make that good first impression. And by first impression, I don't mean just looking pretty, but also, it needs to be stable, it needs to be functional. One of the favorite things that I like to use internally is if your app or your site crashes, then 100% of your features don't work, right? So it doesn't matter what your roadmap is if your app or site isn't up and running. So even stability and performance is a big part of the product design. So my sense is we will only continue to make more and more progress in this direction of building elegant, simple, beautiful, functional products. The Indian ecosystem is definitely learning quite a bit from the US in terms of elegant design and simplicity and best practices. And sometimes since a lot of these practices were originated by Apple and Google as part of iOS and Android, sometimes it's easier for companies who are physically proximate to them to pick them up first. But I think a lot of companies in India are picking up, great ways to simplify design, etc. I think an area where India has the opportunity to leapfrog most other parts of the world is actually in payments and transactions because of the structural problem that there aren't that many credit cards and debit cards in the country. Therefore, in the US, if let's say you're using iTunes and you've inserted your credit card number, largely the friction has been removed from purchasing content. Whereas in India, people still largely don't have credit cards or debit cards, or more importantly, don't use them very frequently. And therefore, things like carrier billing end up being a huge enabler in terms of driving adoption of a lot of products. We've actually found that the number of users converting from just streaming music to subscriptions has significantly increased because we have a deep carrier billing integration, for instance, on Wink Music. So my sense is there is an opportunity to leapfrog and have a new business model and a new flow for users to adopt, especially apps that have a subscription model. The most successful payment systems will be the ones I use every day, right? It's very unlikely that I'll adopt a product for one category and I'll adopt another product for another category. And today where payments are at is there are solutions in different categories, but there isn't this ubiquitous way for me to do a lot of what I do every day, right? In fact, if we ask the question of if I leave home in the morning and I don't have cash with me and I only have these products, arguably I wouldn't be able to go very far without having to go to an ATM and withdraw money, right? So in some sense, the right solutions will essentially not be just convenience in one type of outlet, whether it's online or offline, but really start to be a cash replacement, right? And Airtel has been a very, very early participant in this area. We started Airtel Money in 2011 when it was not very fashionable to be in the payments business. And largely by being a very early player, we've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. The most important thing being, there are two distinct types of users in India for payments. One is a migrant worker who is in a construction site, whether it's in Bangalore, there is a site called Jigri outside of Bangalore where there are lots of these construction workers, and they're taking a large chunk of their monthly income and transferring it to wherever their family is in Bihar or West Bengal, and they do a huge chunk of transfers. So usually about 80 to 90% of their monthly income is transferred as part of this remittance use case. And that user is very different, right? They're not a smartphone user. They're not doing this for convenience. They're doing this for remittances, and it's a necessity, right? Their family is otherwise not going to have food for the basic necessities. And so that's a very different user. It's a very different use case. It's a very different solution model. And the other user is people like you and me who are using smartphones, who are using this mostly for convenience. We're going to use it because of daily habit, etc., etc. And I think, again, the right payment solution will solve for both of those use cases in the right way, using the right models, etc. If you follow the model of a lot of successful companies and why they've succeeded, three major models are, you might sell gear like Apple or Square, etc., and make money selling hardware. The second model is you might sell a e-commerce or a subscription service. And the third model is ad-driven, right? I think in India, the market for advertising is still catching on, and therefore it's still, I think, early stages of companies being able to build massive businesses where they can invest on content because they have a massive advertising business to build on top of their content, right? And so those businesses, whether they're in healthcare or education or even mass media content, a lot of the successful ones they've been part of media houses where they can probably absorb the cost of the content acquisition. But if you're an independent company, you have a lot of sunk costs for content. And we've had that experience with music. And so unless you have a distribution model that's either subscription driven or advertising driven, the initial costs tend to be kind of restrictive for a lot of successful companies to consistently create high quality content, right? Whether they monetize through advertising or through subscriptions. And I think from a hardware perspective, I think there are a lot of incredible hardware devices that are coming into India, whether it is 4G phones or wearables coming into India, etc., etc. So my sense is incredible hardware will find its way to India. It's already finding its way to India. It will only continue to accelerate. And as more and more consumers invest in those devices, now their proclivity to go buy subscription services to take the best value out of their hardware investments is going to then drive a lot of demand. And I think that demand is going to maybe create enough of an opportunity for more content companies and more subscription companies to be created. But that is an interesting chicken and egg problem, which one way to solve that problem is to create a really good product, but there's also the stimulation of demand. My strong belief is there's going to be a lot of new content companies that are going to be built because 4G is going to be so ubiquitous that if I now have invested in Xiaomi phone or an iPhone or the new Micromax phone that came out today, I'm going to now look for services on top of it. And so my sense is as 4G becomes more of a reality, there's going to be more opportunities that get created in those areas.